This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. You know, I don't put that classic Frank Sinatra song at the beginning of this podcast because I'm necessarily in some terribly reflective mood or am trying to make a kind of a look back point, because if you listen to that song, it was a very good year. It's kind of his reflective walk through life. But it got me thinking, because if you, and this is the only comment I think I've made during the election season, but if you look at how people have been viewing this election, the American election that is, putting all their hopes and desires and dreams in the election of one man, and then the country is evenly divided down the middle. You know, what's more useful as a human being? Is it more useful to get all geared up about that? Or is it more interesting to listen to the Frank Sinatra song, which is kind of this nice walk through life, kind of a pleasant, easygoing way? Well, of course, the pleasant, easygoing way is better. It's basics 101. So, you know, I made a comment on Facebook this morning. I said to my conservative friends, if you continue to put forward candidates that simply want to be in people's bedrooms, you're going to lose elections. And I said to my liberal friends, if you believe economic freedom will come from the government, you will never have economic freedom. Two very different thoughts that apply to two very different political ideologies. And you should think about that. To my conservative friends, if you keep running social issue candidates, you'll never win an election again. And to my liberal friends, if you think the government can solve the economic ills, give you economic freedom, you'll never have economic freedom. I don't want to really debate politics. I mean, that's it. That's where it's at. And so if you think about that Frank Sinatra song and you think about the pragmatism of how I just described the political situation, and I think you can actually put the numbers, there's some empiricism behind what I just said. I think you could put numbers behind what I said for both points. They're different points, but I think you could find the numbers to justify both points, just as an objective standpoint. So where do I want to go with this morning? Where I want to go with this is the Frank Sinatra way, the kind of go with the flow way. And, you know, every couple years, somebody says trend following doesn't work or trend following is dead. Usually it's right at the time when trend followers have a drawdown. And right at the time they have the drawdown, the people that don't really want to believe in trend following will then show up and say things like, trend following is not working, people are losing money, this and that. I don't know. Last I checked, if you look through the performance data of my 4 books, it's pretty clear that you will lose money as a trend following trader. Can I repeat that? You will lose money as a trend following trader. You will also make money as a trend following trader. That means you're going to have volatility in your returns. Your account might be worth $5,000. It might go to $10,000. It might go to $7,500. It might go to $7,000. It might go to $12,000. It might go to $15,000. It might go back to $10,000. It might go to $12,000. It might go to $20,000. It might go back to $15,000. Do you see? That's the way it works. That's the world. That's life. Life is volatile. You can't predict what's going to happen. You can only make your bets, have stop losses in the market, and say, I'm going to get out if I lose this amount of money. And you hope for the best. You have a good strategy. You have a good way to get in. You've selected your portfolio appropriately. And then you hope for the best. So as I talk about the idea of people coming out and discussing the idea that trend following has stopped working, let me read a really nice paragraph from Jason Gerlach of Sunrise Capital. Jason's a good guy. He was very, very kind to me to make sure I got access to the principals at Sunrise Capital for my little book of trading, which was a fantastic under-the-radar story of success. They're located in Del Mar, California, just right up the road from where I'm at today. And just a 30-year track record of success. So once again, you have people that at various points in time will say, trend following doesn't work. It lost 5% for the month. Well, let's look at it a little more in depth. So consider this thought from Jason. Quote, trend following is no more dead than the sport of sailing or the act of kite flying would be considered dead if for a period of time the wind didn't blow. Like a sailboat or a kite, a trend following trading model is designed to capture the power of environmental forces. When the requisite environmental forces don't occur for stretches of time, activities that depend on those environmental forces are not going to be successful. But if the wind stopped blowing for a month, would that mean that the concept of sailing or kite flying no longer makes sense? Of course not. The physics of both activities would still make perfect sense, and once the wind started blowing again, sailboats will sail and kites will again fly. The same holds true for trend following. Just as the wind will always return to blow in the future, the forces that drive price trends, greed, fear, euphoria, panic, will return at some point. And when they do, trend following trading models will make a great deal of money, end quote. Isn't that nice, right? That's what people, when they try and wrap their arms around trend following at first, let's say they're coming from a value perspective or a fundamental perspective, it's like they think there's a gotcha moment, that it's all just going to stop and go away, won't work anymore. Now, mind you, I've discussed in my podcast multiple times a paper that you should find online by AQR about trend following and its success back to 1903, every decade back to 1903. That right there, if you're trying to be an empiricist, if you're trying to look at data, if you're trying to not just listen to people say the emotional plea, oh, someone lost money, or oh, there was some volatility, and attaching some basic human panic thought to that, oh, that must mean the strategy isn't working. Now, before I go too much in defending trend following, what's quite humorous is the efforts that trend following traders, the efforts that they go to defend themselves. It's quite hysterical, because what's the other side of the ledger? What's the other side of the coin? The other side of the coin is literally the Jim Cramers of the world, the Dave Ramseys of the world, the Susie Ormans of the world, the mutual funds of the world, the long-only hedge funds of the world that are only an Apple leveraged to the hilt. That's the alternative. And then if you add in a simple thought that we all know instinctively exists, the idea of a black swan, the idea of a random event that nobody can foresee, that pushes major equity market averages way down. Way down. Is it impossible to imagine the S&P going down 50% from here? It's gone down 50% twice in the last decade or so, hasn't it? Could you imagine it going down 50% again? So that's the other side of the ledger. So you can look at trend following and you can say, well, this strategy is too much for me. I don't like the idea that I could lose money. I would rather have a strategy where I pretend that I will never lose money. And then when I lose it, I can be shocked, wet my pants, and go puke my guts out and start complaining and calling politicians and telling them that Wall Street ripped me off because I just was long only some investment. I didn't pay attention. I didn't have any strategy. And so I got my butt burned. And now I'm going to complain till the cows come home. And maybe there's going to be bailouts, and maybe there's going to be QE, infinity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's what's interesting about trend following is that the warts, the scars, the negative aspects are there for all to see. It's honest. It's transparent. It's open. You know what it is. The other stuff is like investing in The Wizard of Oz. And you know that great scene, the classic film. Dorothy looks over and she sees some goofy old dude. All of a sudden the curtain, I guess actually it was Toto, I think, pulls the curtain open. And they see, the wizard back there with all the levers and arms moving. So it's that kind of awakening moment. So you can go through life actually looking behind the scenes, and looking behind the scenes at trend following is great because you just look at the performance data. It's like, boom, boom, there it is. Whoop, there it is. Whereas the other stuff, you have to kind of look at the curtain across the room and say, what's going on behind there? Well, I really don't want to know what's going on behind there. I'd rather not know how they make the soup. I'd rather not know. I don't want to know what the ingredients are. As long as my statement says something that makes me happy, as long as I have a sugar high, as long as that have that delightful feeling that I have when I walk down the aisles of Walmart and I see the latest flashy piece of delightful plastic just shipped in straight from China that I can buy, that I can take home and I can unpack and put next to the other piles of plastic in my life. So you have to you got to make comparisons here. What do you want? Do you want to have some openness? Do you want to have a sense of groundedness? That, hey, life is not a straight line. Markets are not a straight line. Performance is not a straight line. Or is it just too hard? It's better to be over there on the side of the ledger to where the fantasy just, it's like, dear Mr. Fantasy, right? And those are the choices that you come down to. And I thought that's what was so great about Jason's intro, where he was talking about sailing or kiting in the wind. That the wind is not there all the time. But that's okay. And I'm sure, look, Jason would say it, I would say it. Yes, there is a percentage chance that the wind will never return. There is a percentage chance that the Dow and the S&P and the NASDAQ will go straight up from here for the next 50 years. 10% a year, every year, guaranteed. There is some chance that could happen. There is some chance that there will never be another down year in the stock market. Now, do you want to bet everything on that? Do you want to bet everything on that? Especially since you've already had two minus 50% years in the last decade. And not to get all fundamental on anybody for a second, but if the Fed had not decided to work with interest rates, if the Fed had not decided to work with QE, whatever, would equity markets be where they are today? Which, once again, isn't me trying to predict anything. It's basically pointing out to you, do you want to live your life trusting the man behind the curtain, or do you just not want to pay attention? I mean, if you had your choice, do you really want to know what the Fed is doing? Do you really want to care? Do you really care? I mean, does economic freedom mean that you have to have, constant 24/7 knowledge of everything that's going on in the TV? Everything that the talking heads on Fox and CNN and MSNBC are saying? Does that stuff really do anything for you? Or as my yoga instructor, I love the term, has thrown out there that I use quite a bit these days, or do you enjoy the mind chatter? Do you want your brain racing nonstop? Like, what do you want? Someone called these a rant the other day. I don't know if they're a rant. I think my comment is I said that these weren't really rants. These were, I am channeling a prince from Egypt 3,000 years ago who has been wandering the interior of pyramid caves too long. And perhaps, I don't know, maybe I've been bitten by the wrong scorpion, or I've drank the wrong glass of Egyptian fun tonic that they might have served back in the day. I don't know, but they're not rants. I'm just trying to get people to see a perspective. And by the way, speaking of seeing a perspective, 2 interviews that I've done this week are, and I recommend both books, Jack Schwager's new book, Michael Mauboussin's new book. Both of those books kind of very much in the spirit of where I go on my podcast, are getting you to look at the world from a different vantage. Don't just accept what they tell you. Try and observe objectively. Get outside the game and be a spectator of the game. Don't pretend you're in the game. You're really not in the game. Be a spectator of it. Let the other people run around with their heads chopped off. So, both podcasts with Jack Schwager and Michael Mauboussin, must listens. And I would buy both books. Just go buy the books. I'm not being paid anything. I just have people on my podcast that I like, that I think are cool, smart people, have something interesting to say. But those books, and I've read both of them, it's definitely good stuff. And I have one other book recommendation, and I might have given this last time too. It is by a guy named Stephen Cope, C-O-P-E. It's called The Great Work of Your Life, A Guide for the Journey to Your True Calling. I'm partly into this, but I definitely recommend it. Look, it's not, this book by Stephen Cope is not going to be necessarily huge, breaking new ground. It's very much in the spirit of Seth Godin's Do the Right Thing and how to think about the world and stuff. But, sometimes people give a different perspective and a different take, and I would recommend the Great Work of Your Life. And since I came in with Frank on that cool song, It Was a Very Good Year, and since I've just recommended The Great Work of Your Life, I think I will go out with a little bit more of It Was a Very Good Year. In fact, this is a clip that's kind of interesting. I found this on YouTube. This is a clip where Sinatra was actually recording the song, and it's interesting to hear his banter with the head of the orchestra and just talking about putting the song together. So, good stuff. Enjoy.
The days are short.
The last part.
I'm in the autumn of the year, and now I think of my life as vintage wine from fine old kegs. But now the days are short. I'm in the autumn of the year.
I think I swallowed a shot glass.
Listen,
Jack,
Lowell,
must be playing the viola. It's nobody
if
playing.
any popping of peas, let's stop. Because there were too many the peas popping in the past dates we did. Can you clear those up a little bit?
Yeah, if they don't thump. If they're a real thump, I can't.
Well, I don't thump, I'm a sneaky pea popper.
I'll stop you.
All right.
Shall we try one?
Yeah.
Can we make one?
I think I'm much more a singer than I am a crooner. In the days of Russ Colombo and Rudy Valley, I think that they were rightly termed crooners because they had very small, soft voices. They were very good at it, but when Bing came along, he was more of a singer. And I think through the years, most of us have begun to execute more singing than we did crooning, rather than being nasal or making cow-like sounds of moves and those utterances,
You have to hear it.
What's the time on that?
Why are you laying out there?
How long? 3:20? 4:12. That's longer than the first act of Hamlet.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.